Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brian Downs, and I'm one of the co-founders of Performance Nerds, and that's John McNamara, my other co-founder. So we started this business. Well, we kind of informally started about 7 years ago, and 3 years ago, formally
probably
together.
three. I think everyone's lost a year and a half.
Yeah, I've lost track of time at this stage.
Yeah,
it's about 3 years ago. So today we want to talk about something called connected leadership. We operate kind of three models really. We look at performance optimization, we look at team development, and within team development there's an element of individual development, and we look at connected leadership, all with the purpose of getting people to engage with the work and allowing them or enabling them to perform at their best. And it's something that we've been working on both together and separately for about 11 years at this stage.
Yeah.
We've done a huge amount of research, a huge amount of reading, and had a lot of experiences over the years with different types of people. And, essentially, when we talk about engagement, we want people to come to work because they want to, not because they have to. When we can get people doing that, they're far more likely to perform at their best. So that's just kind of the preamble. John, do you want to add anything there?
I suppose just from a logistics point of view, what we will do is we're going to allow 10 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. So if there is anything in particular that you have questions around or anything that you want to contribute, you can stick them into the Q&A box or the chat box as we go. But what we will do is we'll pick them all up at the end, because it just allows for a better flow, because it's practically better from our standpoint, because we get lost quite a bit. We tend to go down rabbit holes. So it's to keep us on track as much as to keep you on track, because otherwise we can be 2 slides deep and 50 minutes in. So we're just going to leave everything from that perspective to the end. We'll give a minimum of 10, maybe 15 minutes to answer any questions or comments that you want to bring. So other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
And we aim to bring this in and have you done within kind of 45 to 60 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to talk about connected leadership, and specifically we're going to talk about the 5 pillars as we would see them. But before we can do that, let's talk about our agenda and see where we're going to bring it. So first things first, we will look to define connected leadership and what we see it as. We want to have a conversation around what's called discretionary performance, and that will lead us into employee engagement, which it's actually really important, and we look at some statistics around that. From there, we will talk about the 5 pillars of connected leadership, and then our connected leadership model, so kind of how we see it working. And we will take questions then at the end, but as John says, stick them in the chat box or Q&A box, whenever you feel that something comes into your head. So, okay, defining connected leadership. It's pretty simple, and something that we would have known intuitively for quite a while, and eventually got around to putting a kind of a definition around it. And so from our perspective, it's a trust-based philosophy that puts genuine human connection at its center point. And by doing this, people can properly engage and then allow them to perform at their best. And this is what it is. It's about real relationships and really understanding people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're big on connection, human connection. And it would be one of the founding parts of everything that we do, and any work we do individually within an organization or a team. The starting point is always to connect. So let's create a connection first. Everything else comes beyond that, but the connection piece always for us is going, do that at the start. It's like watching your television. Stick in the plug, turn it on, you're connected. Everything else follows from that. So it's been a little bit harder over the last 18 months, the connection piece, but it has been amazing to us how creative people have gotten to be able to still sustain this connection piece from a virtual or hybrid environment. And it really has highlighted the value of connection, because a lot of the challenges we've seen unfold through individuals and teams, they've said, oh, I just don't feel connected with my team. I don't feel connected with the leaders or managers. I don't feel connected to the culture. So when this disconnect happens, it cascades right out across. And I think it's been a good case study for this over the last 18 months.
And something we look at quite a lot is behaviors, in very specific behaviors. And, again, something I'm sure that everybody has come across is this fear-based style of leadership. And it doesn't really work. It may be in the short term that fear will motivate people, that will get people to show up and do something. But what tends to happen is that when people are afraid to challenge, afraid to make a mistake, whatever it might be, they'll operate within a very narrow band of their potential. And we don't want that. We want people to be operating within as much as they can of themselves. And that brings us then to discretionary performance. And what this simply means is that people will decide how they're going to perform. And that decision is based on how they feel. And if they feel that they can, they will. If they feel that they can't, they won't. And essentially what we want to do is get people to decide that they really want to show up, that they really want to give the best, they really want to contribute to the business, to the team, to themselves.
I think there's a base level in all this that you have to meet in order not to get fired. And for some people, that's all they'll give. It's going, okay, when it comes to my performance, I'll give you X amount. That just means that you won't be hassling me. You won't be sending me emails. You won't be challenging me. I can kind of fly under the radar, just come in, tick the box and go. Anything beyond that is at the discretion of the individual. The manager can set KPIs or go, this is what we need to achieve. Here's your targets. But there's a level of performance beyond that the individual gets to decide whether they're going to give this to you or not. And this is firmly at their discretion. You don't have any choice in this once they meet the basic parameters, but there's so much more that can be given if they opt in and say, yes, I want to do more here. I want to give more. And this isn't necessarily about going, oh, so rather than working 8 hours, they're going to work 12 hours. This can be, no, while they're there for 8 hours, they're actually going to do something rather than doing 2 to keep you off their back and then just spending 6 hours surfing the internet. And the discretionary performance piece has been interesting from a leadership perspective and our observations too over the last 18 months, because when people are not sitting in front of you, it's a lot easier for them to just do the minimum and then do nothing else. So if you want to get higher levels of performance, it's how do we initiate or instigate within our people in a remote environment their decision to say, I'm going to give more here. I want to do more here.
And in order to get that, we need to engage people, right? So employee engagement is essentially, it's a leadership problem. And we're not very good at engaging people, and there can be lots of reasons for this. We can put people in the wrong, in a job that doesn't suit them. We might not treat them as well as we could. There could be issues that aren't dealt with. Within our team model, we talk about the elephants in the room and dealing with those. And very often these are engagement killers. But this is essentially a leadership problem, and we can't hide from it. And the numbers are not good, right? So every year for the last 20 years or so, Gallup have conducted a global employee engagement survey. And the numbers haven't changed drastically in the 20 years. So if we look at this, I'll just put it all up. So there in blue, that's 36%. That represents the percentage of people, of employees that are actively engaged in their work. So this means that these are people who are actively contributing to the team, to the business. They are showing up. They're dealing with problems. They're proactive. The 50% are what's called the minimally engaged. John was just talking about that cohort there a little while ago. These are the people that show up. They do the minimum. They do enough so that they don't get fired. They're not really enjoying their job, but they're probably there for the paycheck. And then the 14% are the actively disengaged. And these are a group of people that are actively damaging the business. They're actively disrupting the environment. And these are people we don't want in our business. Now, and they can be actively disengaged again for a myriad of reasons. But the fact is that they're disengaged. So the fact is, we've got 64% of employees that aren't really giving their best or anything approaching their best, that they're not giving and they don't feel enabled to give that discretionary performance. And only 36% are. And that's an embarrassingly low number. And there can be no doubt that this is down to leadership. Okay, again, as I said, it can be poor recruiting, it can be poor conditions, it can be a poor environment, a poor culture, and it can be a poor fit. Again, it can be lots of things, but unless we actually proactively deal with it, it's never going to change. And these numbers did peak a little pre-COVID. The actively engaged was up as high as 40%, but it's now on a downward slide for the last 18 months. Again, this is a problem. So we've got to do something about it. And this is where we believe the connected leadership style or philosophy comes into play. But just something to add to this engagement piece is this: one bad apple in a team. Right? And this is research by a gentleman called Dr. Will Phelps, based in the University of New South Wales in Australia. One bad apple in a team can reduce performance of a team by 30 to 40%. Now that's a staggering amount. And he's classified the bad apple, as he puts it, as in three ways: the jerk, the slacker, the pessimist. The jerk is basically an asshole. He's treating people poorly. It's all about this individual, and nobody else really matters. The slacker is somebody who's really not pulling the weight, they're not doing the job. And the pessimist is somebody who can't see the upside, who refuses to look at a positive outcome. And the challenge with these types of personalities is that they enroll other apples. So one bad apple in the bucket, it's going to spread, and it needs to be dealt with.
They generally seek company. The thing as well with these is the people who fall into the buckets of disengaged or to the point of even becoming a jerk, quite frequently, these people would have come into a position or an organization full of enthusiasm, going, okay, great, this is a fresh start. Let's go, let's get involved here. And there could be a myriad of different reasons, but quite often that desire is still there within them somewhere to go, I actually want to do something of value. I want to contribute. I want to be engaged. I want to feel challenged. But the leadership and management piece has meant that they've just become completely disengaged, disconnected, and are just going in punching the clock. So there are a certain cohort that no matter what you do, you will never engage them. It's not possible. And they could be in the wrong industry, they could be in the wrong role, they could just have a bad attitude, but there is a cohort there that with some good leadership and some good engagement and connection, you'll bring these people back across. And they want to, but they just haven't been in an environment where this has been provided or this was seen as an option for them to go, there's another way here. And this is the challenge that you have as a leader. How can I bring some of these people back over?
And just to give you an example of how that can happen, and it's something we'll see quite a bit of, is broken promises. So as an example, a lot of companies now are in the way of what we call culture PR. So building up their brand, their employer brand. And within that, we have to consider that when we put this kind of content out and this kind of messaging out, we're making promises to potential employees. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody then comes in, goes through an interview process, and this PR, let's call it, is maintained throughout that, then they take a job and they get into the organization and it's different, well, now we have a broken promise. And this happens more than you might think. Mm-hmm. So we got to be really careful about the promises we're making, okay? Because a broken promise means broken trust, and broken trust is very hard to earn back.
Yeah, this generally starts for us at the job spec of what the role is. And we'll ask people quite regularly, especially people who are a little bit flustered or disenfranchised with where they're at. Is like, how close to what you're doing on a daily basis are you to what your role or job spec says? And they were like, it's poles apart. So you're hiring people on the promise of this is what you'll be doing, this is what your role is. Then when they come in, it's completely the opposite. So you've automatically broken trust. Now we do work with some smaller companies too. So we do realize that there's a gray area and you need to pick up some stuff. But more established companies are still doing this. And people are automatically from the start going, that's not what I was hired to do. That's not what my role said. That's not the promises you made to me. So you're pushing them into the disengaged bucket from a very early part of the cycle. And quite often an expensive cycle that you started to be pushing people in there in the first 3 to 6 months.
I'm sure you've all got examples of that and you know, have seen it happen. Maybe it's happened for you at some point or other, but it does happen. And again, that's just one example of how somebody can be turned. So, okay, well then we've got all this. Well, why then should we be driving for engagement? Well, performance for a start. We've mentioned this several times already, but engaged people generally perform better. They're willing to learn more. They're more open. They're willing to ask more questions, and they want to get better. There's a wonderful book called Drive, written by a guy called Dan Pink. He's got a fantastic TED talk, one of the most viewed from recollection, well worth a look, who talks about the science of motivating people. And he talks about 3 things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy, yes, give me a job, don't tell me how to do it. If I have problems, I'll ask. Mastery, I want to get better. And meaning, there must be meaning in this work for me. And engaged people display all of these things, right? They can find these things in the work and they will perform better. There will tend to be fewer issues with people who are engaged, simply because they will deal with them as they come up, not let them fester. They're not looking for problems, they're looking for solutions. It's a simple mindset shift. But typically with engaged people, there are fewer issues. And when there are issues, they're easier to deal with because you're dealing with more open people. Creativity and problem solving. So engaged people are significantly better at solving problems and complex problems, and will be significantly more creative in how they go about their work, especially if that work has the scope for creativity, right? But we want to give people interesting problems to work on. And, you know, when we can do that, we give people the ability and we enable people to apply that creativity and problem solving skill. Collaboration. So we would talk a lot about team-centric organizations. You know, we would believe that a healthy organization is a part of healthy teams and teams that work well together. We would not see organizations about any individual. Now, the thing is, a lot of organizations are built that way, and a lot of particularly senior leaders make it that way. And it doesn't really work as well as it should or could. It leaves a lot of unused performance on the table. Now, where we have engaged people, they are far more willing to collaborate and be part of a team. And, you know, again, I'm sure you can all appreciate how important teamwork is. I know we've got a few people from the hospitality industry, and, you know, again, you will deeply understand how important it is to the healthy functioning of your business, that teams should be at the center of that. But collaboration and engaged people really go well together, and you will see far better results as a result of that. Engaged people tend to be more clear and more focused. So where does clarity focus follows? Why are they more clear? Because they'll ask more questions, because they feel they can, and they'll dig into things, and they won't let things sit and fester. They won't let things occupy their mind and ruminate on them. And so if you want people to be focused, Well, they've got to be willing to get clear first. They've got to be willing to ask tough questions and have good conversations. Happiness and retention. I don't know if you've ever heard the term before, but happy cows produce more milk. It's very true. I have this on good authority from a veteran dairy farmer. But happy people will stay. They will stay where they are. They will stay in the business. They'll want to develop, of course, and they will have needs and wants and want to reach their own goals. But when people are engaged, when people are led well, when people are in an environment and a culture that is working for them, they will tend to be happy and they will tend to stay. This is saving organizations huge amounts of money, because hiring and retraining is expensive. So, there is a commercial upside to happy people. And you know what? Who doesn't want to be happy in their work? I think everybody does. So it's a win-win. And the last piece here is psychological safety. Now, we want to stress here, this is not the kind of psychological safety where people should hide. What we mean when we talk about psychological safety here is that it's a safe place to challenge and be challenged. It's important that there are robust and honest conversations, but these can be done in a meaningful and productive way. And that's what we mean by psychological safety. It's not a place to hide. Again, in our work with teams, we would emphasize the need for tension. Tension matters, and tension is important because people need to be able to speak what's in their head, speak their minds, and have debates around issues that matter. That's how we progress. That's how we grow. So psychological safety is an outcome of engaged people. John, do you want to add anything to that? I've been talking for a bit.
No, I think they're pretty apparent, but I think they're all interconnected. You rarely have one or two of these in isolation. If you're doing it well, they're all connected. But I think the most important thing in all of these, especially when it comes into teams and organizations, is like performance is the top point. That's like the Northern Star. Everything comes down from that. So we're not doing this just because it's nice, or going, oh yeah, it feels good, or other companies are doing this. No, we're doing this from performance nerds because our understanding of this and what we studied and observed and seen in practice is you get better performance from people, you get more engaged people, you keep them for longer if you have these conditions in play. And quite often, if you look at this objectively, it's easy to spot where you don't have this. Clarity and focus is one of the ones that we see missing the most.
I think it's worth saying here as well, John, that where we see a lot of these missing the most in terms of teams are executive teams, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Generally, the most dysfunctional teams within organizations, because there's a lot of politics going on and there's rarely psychological safety. But that's an aside. So look, this is kind of the why, right? Why is this important? Why should we be moving towards this connected leadership type philosophy? So let's talk about, well, okay, what is it? And these are our 5 pillars, our 5 pillars for connected leadership. So the first, authentic relationships. I mean, you will have gotten this from what we've said up to now, but autocratic style, commanding type leadership relationships, they're damaging. It's a fact. We know this. There's a very narrow opportunity of use for that commanding autocratic style, and that really is only when there's a crisis, and we shouldn't be having that many crises. But this is about being real. It's about being honest. It's about treating people well and creating a real human connection. Now,
I think in this, it's about being genuinely interested in your people, because I've seen a lot of people read stuff about this and, oh yeah, we should have authentic relationships and we should have connection. But when you're on the receiving end of it, you're going, this is as false as hell. Like, they're just after reading something, or they were on an MBA course and they were told about this concept and they're trying to apply it. But I know behind it, they don't give a shit. So you're sitting there going, really? And we've all been in that position where you're going, this is really false. And we've also been on the flip side where we're going, this person genuinely actually cares about me. They care about me as an individual outside and inside the organization. And then you're more likely to form these authentic relationships. So it's not just this thing of going, oh, that's something I can do to get them to perform better. It has to come from a genuine place. Otherwise, people feel like, no, they're not for me. Not for me.
And look, again, important to stress, this isn't all sunshine and rainbows. You know, authentic relationships mean real, honest conversations. It means giving somebody feedback that they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. You know, and this requires developing emotional intelligence. It requires allowing yourself to be a bit vulnerable from time to time, because it should be a two-way street, right? So the people you lead should be able to give you feedback that you don't necessarily want to hear, but you need to hear. And I think a really important part of this from the leadership perspective is to give trust first. You know, you think about it, you're bringing somebody into your team, into your organization. They're going to be probably a little bit nervous. It's a new role, new environment that they're in. It's really important that you trust them first, because it's going to take them a little time to trust you. So you've got to show them, you've got to lead the way. And this is what being a leader is about, right? And that's where that bit of vulnerability comes in. It's to take that step up. Okay. It's to be the person who is going to bring somebody into your team. I mean, properly bring them in and help them, or create a connection with them and help them create connections with others. And the emotional intelligence piece is really, really important in terms of this. Again, it's something that we would talk about quite a lot. And the thing is, emotional intelligence can be learned. You know, it's not something either you have, you don't. It can be learned, and the other good thing is that it will naturally get better as you get a bit older, a bit more experienced. But it's something that's definitely worth learning. When we would lean on the work of Daniel Goleman around this, who didn't come up with the concept, but he popularized it and explained it in a very simple way. If you've never read his book called Emotional Intelligence, it is definitely worth a read. And you know, there's plenty of content online in terms of videos on YouTube and various websites. But it's probably the most important set of leadership skills that exist in my mind anyway, the emotional intelligence. John, what would you think?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more important now, because I think not just because we are talking about it today, but this element of connection with people is becoming more and more important. The days of just people coming in and just being a cog to make you money are well gone. And it's something that people are demanding almost at this point. We will hear this regularly back from managers and leaders that when they're interviewing graduates, the conversation is very different to what it was 10 years ago. And it's only going to go more in this direction. So I think if you are leading people, if you're looking to attract the top talent that's out there, these concepts are going to be hugely important for you.
And so then the second pillar, it's about creating belonging, right? So what do we mean by this? Well, I think this starts with understanding values, understanding principles, creating some meaning for the individuals, and helping them create meaning in their work. To find some purpose. And again, I know this all sounds lovely and soft and fluffy. This is hard work. These are hard skills. These are not soft skills. And again, you know, you'll see many organizations with lovely plaques in their reception area listing their values and their principles and their vision statement, the mission statement and all of that. And it very often it's not lived. So again, these are some of the promises that we make that we need to live. And so if we're going to set out values and principles and meaning and purpose, we need to live them. It can't be just words on a page, and too often it is.
Yeah, I was reading a book recently. The last book I read, it's probably about 2 weeks ago, called Scaling Up. One of the concepts he had in it, which I found quite interesting, was creating a line of sight. So it's basically the person who's doing a job who might think, sure, this is insignificant. What am I bringing to the business? Okay, by doing this piece here, sure, I'm just plugging stuff in, or I'm doing X, Y, and Z. You should be able to, by and large, with most of the people are doing, create a line of sight between their role, their tasks, and the organizational objectives and vision. And if you can't, that's something you have to work on, because otherwise people don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have that sense that what I'm doing is of value. And that's where they become disengaged. It's just like, I'm just in here plugging away. I'm doing my 40 hours, but sure, like if I wasn't here, would it make any difference? So I think this piece of line of sight, and that's a real piece that you can get and hone as a leader, is to create that line of sight for an individual, to show them how what they're doing matters and how it contributes to performance and the overall organizational objectives. And that creates belonging, because then they feel like what I do matters. It's important I'm here. My contribution is being noticed. And I think that will help in this space as much as anything.
I think, again, something we would talk about in the team environment is mehel, which is an Irish word.
Yeah.
Its literal translation is work, team, or cooperative. Now, and we take this to as kind of a spirit to build community. Now, the founding of the word mehel, or the idea of mehel, it comes from farmers in Ireland, and it was the idea that neighbouring farmers would help each other out. They'd help each other with cutting silage or bringing in a harvest of potatoes or whatever it might be, or the big, heavy, labour-intensive jobs, that neighbouring farmers would help each other, because everybody was in the same boat. They were all trying to make a living, and they all needed people. So entire families would chip over to the neighbouring farm to pitch in for a day or a couple of days or whatever it might be. And the idea would be that everybody would work really hard. They would get fed, and they would have plenty of cups of tea, and at the end there might be a pint of stout or a glass of whiskey and some dancing to celebrate a job well done and working together. Nobody got paid in this. It was helping each other for the sake of helping each other. And we would feel that this needs to be brought into the business world, that we help the people around us, because collectively we're trying to get to the same place. We're on a team, we're trying to achieve an outcome, and we work better. We have a greater chance of getting there if we work better together. And again, I use the word family here. Families fight, yes, and so do teams, and that should be allowed. It should be moderated and managed, but it should be allowed to happen, because this is important. People need to express themselves.
There's a brilliant book on this as well called Belonging. It's written by a guy called Owen Eastwood. It's out about 6 months. His heritage is quite a mix. It's a mix. There's some sort of about 1/8, I think, Irish in there, which is most people in the world, I think, at this stage. And he's a hybrid between British and Kiwi, but primarily his roots are in New Zealand. And he talks about the concept of whakapapa, which is connection to your ancestors down through the years. And it's really, really good. He does a lot of work with organizations, and he does a lot of work with sports teams around creating this sense of belonging. It's an easy read. It's enjoyable. So if you're curious around this pillar specifically in belonging, I definitely recommend picking up the book from Owen Eastwood. It's Owen Eastwood, and the book is just called Belonging. It's definitely worth a read.
Our next pillar is striving for clarity. Again, we've talked about clarity already. Clarity is really important. So what we're talking about here is clear outcomes for individuals and teams in the organization. Clarity around the roles that people play, a willingness to navigate ambiguity proactively. Again, I think, a lot of leaders will use ambiguity to hide behind.
Yep.
But we can't expect people to perform at their best if we're creating ambiguity. We need to navigate it. We need to plow through it, and we need to be proactive about that. It's about creating a strong vision for the future while maintaining a presence in now. And connected leaders know that ambiguity is counterproductive. They just know this and will strive to get beyond it. It doesn't mean that ambiguity is bad. It just means that we've got to keep pushing through it and keep pushing on, because clarity is something that evolves over time. And yeah, we need to be clear with people if we want them to perform at their best.
I think clarity is also a byproduct of authentic relationships, belonging, and trust. That there's a lot of stuff in your organization that people are unsure of, But if they don't feel safe to ask the questions, they will they'll just stay in that space. They will take action on stuff they're not sure on. They will stay stuck, confused, frustrated, to the point where they'll consider going, either I'm no good at this or I need to leave. So I do think there's we didn't put them in this order specifically, but I do think there's a knock-on of all of them. And where we observe this the most, where there's a lack of clarity, we can usually sit back and observe and say, people don't feel safe to ask questions here when it's ambiguous. And if that is present within your organization or within your teams, that you're going, okay, there's a lot of confusion here, you can more than likely track this back to people not feeling safe to put their hand up and say, I don't understand what we're doing here. I don't understand what you're asking of me, and developing that sense of clarity. And it's constant. The requirement for clarity is always there.
Absolutely. So moving on, then we go to our fourth pillar, and that is transparent accountability. So really, this is about honesty. It's about being transparent about where you are, where everybody is. This is where the tough conversations come in, where they're needed. But it's accountability for everybody, including the leader. Okay, this is really important. This is not someplace for the leader to hide. This is about everybody. And again, this requires some vulnerability. This requires a willingness to step up and be open. And we see connected leaders who operate under this pillar, the transparent accountability pillar. They're willing to delegate both tasks and authority to people. Okay, where there's lack of connection, there's a lack of trust, and people will be hesitant, certainly, to delegate authority. But where there's good connection, we will see leaders delegate tasks and authority, or ownership of things. And a tool we use here to help this along is related to MEHL that we spoke about earlier on. We call it MEHL meetings. And the idea here is that they're meetings that happen on a regular basis. It's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, whatever it might be, where everybody in the meeting will speak, everybody will talk or present. And what they present essentially is, okay, at the last meeting I said I would be at this point. I got to point Y. So I hit my mark because this happened. I exceeded my mark because this happened, or I didn't hit the mark because I need support with. And the idea here is that nobody will hide. Nobody can hide. Nobody wants to come into a meeting every week or every 2 weeks or however often it is and not show any results. It also allows us to see where the development opportunities are, where people need help, how we can start to hone our performance levels. And it's a very open place. As we said, there's no place to hide. And it really, really, really works well. It's challenging, very challenging. But once groups get into this and how it works and get used to having these tougher conversations, you can see the authentic relationships start to thrive even more. It's a really, really useful tool. Okay, fifth one. And this is about delivering results. At the end of the day, we're paid to produce results. And there are many ways to do this. But again, connected leadership is about focusing on the outcomes, right? It isn't about managing everybody's tasks per se. It's about saying, okay, here's the outcome. I mean, there's an environment called ROWE, ROWE, results only work environment, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And basically what this is saying is, okay, team, here's the team outcome. Individual, here are all your individual outcomes. Go do it. You need help? Let's talk. We need to collaborate. Let's put that together. But you can work 2 hours a day or 15 hours a day or whatever it is that suits you. You can work in the morning or at night, and whatever works for you. But the focus is on the result. The focus is on the outcomes. The focus is on collaborating where we need to, and the focus on alignment. We're all moving in the same direction. And you know, we can't have a leadership philosophy without a focus on results. And however they're measured, whether they're in KPIs or hard numbers, whatever it might be, they need to be measured, and they need to be tracked through our MEHL meetings, through our transparent accountability.
Yeah, I think the thing with this is sometimes when we discuss this, people think, oh, connected leadership, that's a bit soft, isn't it? It's nice and fluffy as a concept. But when you look at the 5 pillars here, it's really not. It's actually quite tough to build authentic relationships. It takes a lot of work to create a sense of belonging for people. Clarity is always an ongoing challenge. There's always, when you move one piece of the jigsaw, something in the system moves and creates ambiguity somewhere else. So that's a constant piece. Transparent accountability is one of the things that we see people rally against the most in organizations. They prefer to operate in a cloud because they don't need to own it. And when people don't own stuff, it gets very, very messy, very, very fast. And it's easy for people to say, that's not our department, especially if you're working across functions. They're like, no, ye own that. No, ye own that. No, they own that. And then all of a sudden you get these standoffs and you get kinks in the hose, and everybody gets really frustrated and really pissed off. And that can lead to disengagement really quickly. And ultimately what it does is it cascades into delivering results. And also, especially if you're project-based, which a lot of organizations we would work with are, your timelines and deadlines then get really stressful and really congested. And a lot of this is unnecessary because the elements before this aren't being done properly. So I think if you can take something from this, it's take the 5 pillars and do an honest assessment of where you're at within your team or your organization on these, and identify the one to say, okay, even if we just worked on belonging, or maybe clarity is the one that we need to start with. I would be reticent to say, take all 5 and try start working on them all at once. And people do this. You might think, yeah, that's a bit silly. Who do that? But people do this regularly. They'll take stuff from a presentation or a book and go, yeah, we'll start doing all of this. So for me, I'd say, okay, do a proper inventory here. Look at where you're at and just say, okay, what's the one here that's probably going to give us most bang for our buck here? And start to integrate that slowly within your team. And then you'll see it cascade out across the others and the impact it'll have. Okay, we should move on because we're going to be tight for time, I'd say.
Yeah, again, just before we move off this, one other point is, again, these are not soft skills. These are hard skills to learn. These are hard skills to apply. And this is really about embracing our own discomfort. Right? Yeah. It's saying, okay, I'm really uncomfortable with this, but I'm going to go at it anyway because there's a really positive outcome for us. And what we want to do is help people to embrace that discomfort.
Yes. One of my biggest irks in business is how they refer to the hard stuff as soft skills.
I know, yeah, it drives me mad too. But there we go. I don't think we're going to change that, John.
No, we're not going to fix it today anyway.
No. Okay, so look, this is kind of the model that we look at when we're talking about connected leadership. There's three outcomes that we're looking for. We're looking for high performance, we're looking for engaged communication, we're looking for optimized talent. And within each of those, at high performance, we're looking at the organization as a whole, we're looking at the teams within that organization, and we're looking at the individuals within those teams. And it takes all of those together to create high performance workplace. From the engaged communication piece, when we have people who operate in engaged communication, we can start to grow our culture. We can clearly define our culture and understand our culture. We can understand what our culture needs and what's missing at any given time. We can develop clarity around roles, around outcomes, around responsibilities, around what needs to be done. We can collaborate better. We can ask questions more, and we can be more creative because we can have the conversations that matter. We can have those tough conversations that actually have meaning, rather than sitting in a meeting for an hour that really only needed 5 minutes. You could take that 5 minutes and really give it a lot of meaning. And the last we said, optimized talent. This is about the entire talent management pipeline. You know, it's about recruiting the right people for the role. the right people for what the team needs. So, if your team needs somebody who's going to come in and challenge a bit and maybe disrupt a little, that's fine. Go out and look for that rather than finding somebody who fits exactly into the same personalities as everybody else. That's a bad thing. You don't want a team full of the same type of individuals. It's about engagement. And again, this is a leadership issue. We need to hire people who want to engage, and then we need to help them do it. We need to be developing people constantly, and then we need to retain people. We need to retain that expertise and experience and that talent within the organization. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
The bottom one is an interesting one for me, because one of the things you'll probably read a lot on LinkedIn, or if you listen to podcasts, you'll get a lot of the war for talent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like we're all out here trying to find the best people, and it's a war to get the good ones in. But the curious thing for me is, in their war for talent, they generally only focus on the top one. We've recruited them. Brilliant. We've won the war. I'm going, you have momentarily, but they're going to be gone because you forgot to engage, develop, or retain them.
And there's bound to be some broken promises in there too.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, yeah, you might have won the battle, but you definitely haven't won the war, because these people after 6 to 12 months are back on LinkedIn searching jobs again, going, okay, how do I get out of here? It's going to look bad in my CV if I leave within a year. So I'll hang on in for 18 months and then I'll jump again. So it's like, don't just win the war on recruitment. Anyone can win the war on recruitment. That's just based on false promises. But engage them, develop them, and retain them.
What's happening with particularly in-house recruiters is that they're being incentivized.
Absolutely.
By the number of people that they get, not the quality of the people they get. And that's creating a big problem. So they're essentially becoming in-house recruitment agencies.
Yes, you're also getting people within organizations who are offered bonuses for getting their colleagues in as well. And I'm not going to slag them, because I did this before in a previous life when I worked for an IT company. You could get anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 to $5,000 for getting somebody in to fill a role, depending on the level of seniority. So not always the best way to get people in, mind you.
No.
But it's a nice bonus for the people in-house if they're going to work as part-time recruiters.
Absolutely. So look, that's it. I mean, if you want to know more about us, about connected leadership, about the team stuff or the performance optimization, get in touch with us for a conversation. I'll put up our email addresses and contact stuff there in a few minutes. You can follow our company page on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. You can connect with either of us or both of us on LinkedIn if we're not connected already. And you can subscribe to our nerd letter, which is a piece that goes out once a month, every month. Yep. And you can do that on the website. At this point, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments, anything at all that you'd like to bring up? I'll leave the contact details there for now.
There is nothing in the Q&A or chat box so far, but we'll open up the mics if anybody has questions. Please feel free to speak, or anything that you have with regards to an observation.
I am now allowing everybody to speak. There we go. There we go. Anybody wanted to ask anything or say anything? Are you taking it easy on us?
Can I just jump in, Brian?
Sure, it is.
Yeah,
I thought it was great. Thanks so much. It's been really, really eye-opening for me. I've taken loads of notes here, particularly around the one bad apple piece. I thought was, wow, what an impact on the performance. And I've actually written down one bad apple seeks company, because it's all too often the case, isn't it?
Yes, it is for sure.
Yeah. And that's generally how you see cliques form within organizations too.
Yeah.
You get them over in the corner whispering and everyone's like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah, this is it. I've loved it. I've taken all the notes of the books to go away and get on Audible and all of that. So I'll be downloading loads for the journeys over the coming days. But it was really brilliant. I loved it. Thanks so much. Really, really insightful for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Anyone else? Questions or comments?
You've let us off fierce easy, folks. Okay, we should leave it there then. Our contact details are there. We're open to a conversation with anybody. We don't do a hard sell. It's just if you want to know something, if you want to fire a question, get in touch, let us know. If we can help, we will absolutely love to do so. So thank you very much for being
Thanks
here.
for coming on.
Appreciate you. And take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.